Well, I want you to consider she did lose too. She lost as well. Even with Job. Job was called to go through this trial. He was put on, amen, given a test by God. But Job didn't understand that his wife was in the test, because those was her cattle too. Those was her substance too. Everything Job owned, she owned. Everything that Job was attached to, she was attached to. So a lot of times when you get ready to go into ministry, and this is a good point here, you got to consider that if you're married, you're not the only one that's going into that ministry alone. You're not the only one that's going into ministering. You're not the only one that's going into a pastorship. You're not the only one that's going into bishopric. You're not the only one that's going through it, because if you're married, that wife is going through that same thing with you. She's going to encounter situations with you. And I heard a lot, I read where a lot of individuals said, well, he's called, she's not. No, that's not so much as true, because if he's called, she's called. Because when God called Abraham out, he didn't leave Sarah back with her family. He called Sarah out just like he called Abraham out. When Isaac got called, his wife went out. When Jacob got called and God called them to a higher level, God called Jacob and Rachel and Leah. All of them had to go. And that means that all of them had a mandate on their lives. So it's impossible to say that God just gave him the ministry. Because let me tell you something. Not only did he just give that man the ability to pastor, but that wife would do things on the background you people, many would never know about. That wife would do things in ministry that you don't even comprehend. That wife would push him when he's discouraged. That wife would cause him to flourish. That wife would push him when nobody else would push him. So he didn't get called alone. Yes, he got the call, but I promise you, even when Moses went up into the mountaintop, he was married to Zipporah. But when Moses came back down from the mountain, Moses still was married to Zipporah. Even though he got the calling, he still did the will of God. But at the same time, Zipporah saved his life. And if you read in one portion of scriptures, you find out that Zipporah didn't just throw his forehead skins, amen, when she circumcised her son. She did not just do that just because she was vexed or angry or upset. It's because Moses wasn't fulfilling his role or taking on his responsibilities in the home. A lot of times when men become pastors, a lot of times when they become leaders in the forefront, they tend to forget about that they got a wife, they got a husband, they got a wife, they got children, they got responsibilities, they got other things that they have to attend to versus just ministry. Because you're not just called to ministry all by yourself. You're not just called to push ministry all by yourself. You're called to do other things other than the fact of you just leading a group of people, because those people that you're about to pastor need to see that you are physically fit, and that you're tuned into your wife's needs. Is that a lot of pastors, they tend to forget that wife has need. The wife tend to forget that the husband has need. Sometimes we can get so caught up and wrapped up in ministry that we think it's all about ministry, and we neglect the home, we neglect the children. But God still requires us, as much as you've been called to pastor, you still are required to be there for those children. You're still required to be there to help raise those children. You're there to help groom and help nurture your son, to help guide into, amen. You get caught up, and a lot of times we do get caught up in ministry, and that would make a lot of pastors' children, amen, get very vexed and frustrated with ministry. Is because a lot of times pastors give more time, especially if you're a new beginner, and especially if you just starting your ministry. This is a good note there. This is good for someone who's trying to start a ministry from ground up, and it's different versus you taking over a ministry. But when you start taking, and then you take the initiative from God, and you start trying to do your own ministry from zero up, that means that you've got to be mindful that you do have a wife in ministry. Because a lot of times some pastors get so caught up in ministry that they tend to allow other people to just override the authority and abuse their wives and speak to them harshly, treat them harshly, versus them standing up. Listen, I know you want a member, I know you want members, but never allow anyone to disrespect what you respect. Never allow someone to just mishandle what you handle well, because if not, it's going to bring contention in your ministry as well as your marriage. So I asked the question, do you think it's good for a man that if his wife is not on board to go into ministry? Here's my opinion even more. I don't think you should go if she's not ready. I don't think you should pull your wife into something that she's not ready and physically and mentally and spiritually conditioned to handle. Because if my marriage is already on the rocks, if my marriage is already failing, if my marriage is already going through, if my marriage is not solid and concrete, if my marriage is not exemplifying and you're not loving her as Christ loved the church, I need to hold up. The calling is there, certainly. Yes, God called you to pastor. But one thing is certain, you should give your wife time, ample time, amen, to get on board. You should give your wife ample time to get on board with what the vision that God has given you. Don't force her into the vision. Don't try and push her into the vision. Don't manipulate and use control to get her to respond to the vision. Don't try and make it seem like if though you're the head. Because you know a lot of times men throw this thing out, well, I'm the head. I'm the head. Sure, you are the head. But God never told you to abuse the one that's walking with you in ministry, the one that's going to be there when nobody else would be there, the one that will make up the audience when you don't have an audience, the one that will push you and tell you to preach when there's nobody but you to preach to her. Because you're going to go through those stages, especially if you're at a place of just building ministry, just doing ministry. Everybody cannot just handle your assignment. Make sure she can handle your assignment. Make sure that you let her know that it's not all about you pastoring, because she's going to be able, she's going to have females up under her. Let her know that you're just as part of this ministry as I am. And I want you to know that I want you to be so comfortable in exercising your gift. I need to know if you're on board, because ask yourself, because if you're just taking over a ministry, or either if you're just going into ministry, and I might say this several times, but I'm trying to get a point to let you know that if you are just starting a ministry, I want to tell you, go and seek you some wise counsel from a bishop, from another pastor and his wife. Because when the bills are due, I want to let you know the money's resources sometimes going to come from your home. Are you willing to take your wife through those things? Are you willing to take your children through those places of lack? Are you willing to go through those things? Because you're going to have members that won't pay tithes but yet come to church. You're going to have members, amen, that just love ministry but not givers. You're going to find out everybody is not unctioned. Everybody is not haven't been taught to give. Everybody don't like giving. So there you are trying to pastor a people, and you're trying to get ministry going, but don't take your frustration out on your wife. Don't take your frustration out on your children. You're the one that you said that God has called you. Now, if you're not going to involve her in your calling, that means that you're going to suffer some things unwisely for yourself, by yourself, because you didn't give her the option. You didn't give her timing. You know, a lot of times God called me into being a prophet, and I didn't get to that calling. I had to grow into coming into the prophetic. I had to grow into it. I didn't get it overnight. I had to learn. I had to be seasoned. I had to be rebuked. I had to be chastened. I had to learn when to speak and when not to speak. So you got to ask yourself today, am I trying to push her too fast? Am I zealous? Am I so zealous that I'm trying to get someone else to follow me and I have not been a good follower? Have she seen me as an example of a good follower? Has my children seen me display, amen, humility? Has my children, have my wife seen me display, amen, honoring my leadership? Have they seen me go out of the way for my leadership? Have they seen me go out of the way for the calling of ministry that is in my life? Because who you serve will reflect how you were served. Who you serve will reflect how you were served. Who you serve will reflect how that you would do it when you get into pastoring. One of the things that I've learned, that God will train you as you go on into ministry. You're going to find out God's going to either train you what to do and what not to do. Have you learned what not to do versus what you shall do? Have you learned how to be an usher? Have you learned the protocol? Have you learned all of those things? Because There's a lot of things that go on with ministry. Hey, man, wait a minute. Are you going to put ministry ahead of your wife? Because it's impossible for you to do ministry and leave your wife behind. It is impossible. I don't care how many people that then told you, say, yeah, go on and obey God. God is not the God of author or confusion, neither. He's the God of division. He's not going to let me go so far off in ministry and forget that I have a husband. He's not going to allow me to go so far off in ministry and forget I have children. He's not going to allow me just to get so to the place that I think I'm so carefree, because it's impossible to do ministry and your home is messed up. Your home is not in oneness. You're not even walking in unity. You're trying to smother me. You're yet abusive to me. You're yet controlling to me, but yet you don't even realize that you need me in ministry. Isn't that amazing that so many people are in ministry, but their homes are out balanced? It's so many people trying to run, amen, all over America, and your home is not even in top-notch shape. Your wife don't even know where you are. You don't even call to let her know you made it safe. You don't even call to let her know where you are. You don't even call your husband to let him know where you are. Ministry never comes before the home. When God established ministry, he established the home first. He put Adam first, and he gave Adam a wife. He gave Adam a garden to see if Adam could keep it. And Adam couldn't do nothing but do ministry. But when God gave Adam a wife, when God gave Adam Eve, Adam was no longer just focused in on the garden. Adam had to focus in on his wife Eve. He couldn't do it just with himself. That's why Eve was so vulnerable to Satan. Could it be that Adam wasn't taking care of the responsibilities of his own? Was it being that Adam may have gotten so caught up in doing what he was told to do by God that he forgot about that he had a wife now, that he had to slow his roll and go take care of home? Does it mean that God has neglected the gifts in my life? Does it mean that God doesn't want me to go out and do ministry now because I'm now married? No, God wants me to do ministry, home, and yet at the same time put it in the right order, put it in the right perspective, because your ministry can actually be stunt. Your ministry can be growing, but it could be growing wildly. Your ministry could be growing so wild that there is no control, no government, no protocol in it. There is no order to it, because the thing is, you put church before you put your home. You put church before you put your ministry with your wife, with your children. I had to learn that when my kids were small, and they were very small, and because I didn't have anyone at that time other than my mother-in-law, amen, and she was working to help me keep my children, to help me raise my children, I had to stay at home. And I remember I had started trying to go out and do ministry with Bishop, and I understood Bishop calling. I knew Bishop could never hold a natural job. I knew Bishop could never do the things that I've seen other men do, but I realized of his calling. I knew. And see, one thing is certain. When God put you together, God's going to make sure that she knows your calling. You're going to be able to walk in agreement with each other. You're going to be able to comprehend each other. She's going to be able to comprehend your calling in God. She's going to be able to comprehend what it is, and purpose and destiny that God has called you both into. So I knew it. No one had to tell me. I already knew it. So that itself alone put us in agreement. So when Bishop was getting ready to do evangelism and go out on the field, and we were both married, I'm trying to hang out there with Bishop, and my children are at that age where they needed to be in school, I knew then that somebody had to slow the roll. But guess what? Little old Prophetess didn't want to slow her roll. Little old Prophetess just wanted to keep it going, because I didn't want to get left behind, because so many people would tell you, say, you're going to get left behind. And I felt like I was getting left behind. I felt like the ministry that God had placed in me was lying dormant. I felt like that I too had a calling, but I didn't realize my greatest calling was in my home. My greatest calling was with my children. My greatest calling was to make my children to become what God wanted them to become. I didn't realize that I had to take time out. And I remember sitting down one day talking to my daddy, and my daddy told me, say, now, who's staying at home with the children? And he said, I see you out on the road all the time with your husband, and I see you doing this, and I see you going here. He said, honey, He said, I know you love ministry and I know you love what you do for God. He said, but you're going to have to stop and slow your roll. He said, you're going to have to stop and be a mother to your children and be a wife to your husband. That was a bitter pill to swallow, but I had to swallow that pill in order for our home to balance out, because we couldn't take our children everywhere we go. I had to stay at home and teach my children. I had to stay at home and make sure my daughters was well taken care of. My son was taken care of. I had to do the role, amen, that calls me, because if not, we'd have been out here preaching and y'all be looking at our children and saying, wow, y'all trying to train us, but y'all ain't even training your own children. Now, let me tell you some pastors, people watch your home just like they watch everybody else's home. They watch your home just like they watch T.I., just like they watch Tony Braxton, they're going to watch your home. And a lot of times, and I want to tell you, you're not in this alone. You're not in this by yourself, because that is certain. You need your wife just as much as you say you don't, and you say you can do ministry